We asked earlier, what's the motivation of these pathological guys who are out there like bolstering up the feminists? Yeah, well,
they don't compete any other way.
They don't compete. They figured out how to compete. They compete as allies, let's say. Very sneaky.
Wow.
Yeah, wow.
Sneaky.
Yeah.
And that's how everybody always describes him too. It's almost like I avoid doing it because it just almost feels gross to label them like that. But that is the way you think of male feminists. You think of them as sneaky.
At the beginning of August 2016, a problematic left-wing comedian called Patton Oswalt tweeted out, "The male feminist ally turns out to be a creeper harasser is the family values politician turns out to be gay for millennials." And my goodness, did this tweet hit close to the mark. But Patton wasn't the first person to make the observation that male feminist allies are often sexual predators. In November 2015, radical feminist Laurie Penny had made the same observation when she tweeted, "Now seems like a good time to discuss the men who claim feminist credentials while being abusers in private." But people noticing this trend goes back even further. In 2012, a men's rights activism blog called The Anti-Feminist published an article called "Are All Male Feminists Sex Predators, Pedophiles and Rapists?", asking the male feminist question. But this is not the beginning, however. Back in 2004, a contributor to Urban Dictionary created an entry called Mactivist to describe a pseudo-activist who participates in marches and other activities so that he may have access to cute girls who believe in saving the planet. Professor Jordan Peterson's observations on the motivations of male feminists seems to corroborate this. Unable to attract women on the merits of their ability to fulfill the masculine gender role, instead these often low-testosterone males use subterfuge to gain reproductive access to women. In and of itself, it's creepy, but not dangerous. Except male feminists seem to have a long and well-documented track record of dysfunctional, aggressive and violent tendencies towards women. Female feminists have noticed this as well. There are many blog posts and articles written to warn other female feminists about the dangers of predatory male feminists in their midst, such as this 2015 blog by Elise Gray called "I'm Suspicious of Male Feminists and You Should Be Too," in which she states, "If it isn't grossly apparent by now, my dear male feminists, I'm suspicious of you. Yeah, I know, but not me, not all men, whatever, shut up. And whether men are equally victimized by patriarchy is beside the point. What I am here to tell you is that if your version of feminism puts male needs first, then, loveling, that's not feminism. Because until the day more male feminists are primarily motivated by empathy rather than this self-centered, male-oriented, corrupt feminism that seems increasingly popular nowadays, I will continue to say that I'm suspicious of male feminists, and you should be too." There are articles by women who are wary of men who call themselves feminists, such as this 2016 article in the Sydney Morning Herald called "Why I'm Wary of Men Who Call Themselves Feminists," by a woman whose name I simply can't pronounce, who says, "Gone are the days when the self-identifying male feminists were as rare as unicorns. Look at any online dating site, and amongst the gym and drugged tiger selfies, you'll see them in their thousands. The progressives, typically straight, white, cisgender, middle-class and well-educated, are totally on board with feminism until it threatens or challenges them, and suddenly you're a bitch who's always picking a fight. While the more sinister and predatory types deliberately adopt seemingly progressive identity politics to lure in left-leaning women into romantic or sexual relationships before revealing their true colours, men like my exes sincerely believe that calling themselves feminists is enough, as though basic decency deserves a gold star. They talk the talk, but walking the walk? Nah, that's too much effort. Whatever the motive, one thing is clear. For these men, it's feminism their way or the highway. And it's important to remember that feminism does not exist to appease male sensitivities. To call yourself a feminist but only champion the cause if it fits into the narrow scope of your comfort zone is misogynistic in itself. You are still expecting women to perform on your terms. There are many women who flat out refuse to date another male feminist, such as Kate Iselin, who penned a Guardian article called "Why I Won't Date Another Male Feminist," in which she said, "Men looking for feminist-sanctioned romance tend to fall in one of two categories. Those who use our attention as a sign of approval and seek out trophy feminists to clear their conscience of any inherent patriarchal wrongdoing, and outright predators who employ a bare-bones knowledge of feminist discourse to target any young woman whose politics so much as graze the notion of sex positivity. For every male feminist horror story I have heard, I have been told a dozen more by equally frustrated female friends. There was the chap who invited me to an event, not so much as a +1 but as a testing ground for his ribald, sexist one-liners. After every remark, he would look at me, gauging my reaction to see exactly how much of his cheap and dirty humour he could unleash, while still passing the feminist litmus test. Feminism has enlightened and empowered me, and now I'm using that power to put my foot down and say no more to the movement's male members. Bell Hooks is nobody's wingman, and while it may be correct to say #not all male feminists, I would simply rather not any. Many female feminists have openly warned others about the dangers of the male feminist, such as Nian Hu, a staff writer for the Harvard Crimson, who penned an article titled "Beware the Male Feminist," in which she refers to an earlier blog about the woke misogynist. This is the self-proclaimed feminist man who proudly attends the Women's March and reads Judith Butler and casually throws around terms like gender performativity, but also harasses, talks over, belittles and sexually assaults women. This is the man who prides himself on his progressive politics, who puts anti-Trump and support Orlando filters on his Facebook profile pictures, but then who calls Tomi Lahren a useless bimbo and a whore on the Occupy Democrats Facebook page. After all, male allies often undermine the very movement they claim to support because they fail to acknowledge the role that they themselves play in perpetuating female subordination. Because, as she so simply states, feminism does not need men. Which is why that some men can, in time, become helpful, never integral, allies to women in their fight for liberation, but until then, beware the male feminist. As Guardian columnist Suzanne Moore observes, men on the left are sexist. In fact, according to feminist MP Jess Phillips, left-wing men are the worst sexists of all. When asked whether left-wing men were worse than the out-and-out sexists of the right, she said the left-wing men are the worst, the actual worst. Why should we believe Jess Phillips and all other feminist women who are complaining about feminist men? Because they're women, of course. And it's not just the radical feminist fringe sites like the Mary Sue who promote the importance of believing women either. Even more centrist, though left-wing papers like the Washington Post and the New York Times promote the feminist axiom that we should uncritically believe what women say at all times on the grounds that they own vaginas and that nobody with a vagina would ever lie. After all, false allegations of rape and sexual misconduct are, apparently, so rare that we don't even know how rare they are, but we're certain that around 8% are false. How do we know this? Well, we don't, really. Out of 100,000 allegations of sexual assault made in 2013, and 15,000 of them being reported to the police, only 1,000 men were convicted of rape. This means that we must naturally believe every woman who makes an accusation, even if it results in the complete destruction of an innocent man's career, family and freedom, because we just can't be sure of how many actual rapes are occurring, but god damn it, we're not going to let archaic patriarchal constructs like due process and presumption of innocence get in the way of our mob justice. And that's why, when we go through this list, we are going to be mindful of our feminist principles and remember that we must listen and believe women when they make an accusation. Any accusation, regardless of the evidence or the complete lack thereof. If a woman said it, it must be true. That is the feminist way our male feminists chose to follow, and by the goddess, that's how we're going to judge them. As a quick side note, I'm going to try and avoid the allegations surrounding Harvey Weinstein, Hollywood and the political class. I will try to feature only male feminist activists outside of these spheres and cover them in a separate video. So let's begin. Kyle Payne. An internet-famous radical feminist blogger, Kyle Payne was convicted for assaulting and photographing an unconscious woman's breasts in 2008. He claimed his feminist work against sex violence was to distract himself from the shame of fantasizing about women as sexual objects. According to Jezebel.com, he had admitted that his feminism was deceitful. Hugo Schweizer. Professor Hugo Schweizer was a history and gender studies lecturer at Pasadena City College. Schweizer gained notoriety from inviting porn actors as guests to his class, and built up a considerable feminist following on his contribution to feminist blog Jezebel.com. In October 2013, Schweizer resigned his position after admitting on his personal website to having sexual relationships with some of his students. He admitted on Twitter that he had lied and manipulated and cheated the numerous students he had conducted affairs with. He was labelled by Jezebel.com as famously lecherous. When accused, Schweizer admitted he'd used feminism to attract women. Onision. Gregory Jackson is a YouTube personality and outspoken feminist with over 2 million subscribers, known online as Onision. Jackson has had a long career on YouTube as a comedian. In 2010, Jackson was first accused of emotional abuse by his then wife. In 2011, after his divorce, Jackson became romantically involved with a fan of his channel, who alleged Jackson forced her to be intimate with him, despite her protests. Jackson found himself embroiled in controversy again in 2016 after it came to light that Jackson ran his own internet forum, on which young girls, many between the ages of 11 and 17, would regularly post pictures of themselves while wearing only underwear for Jackson to critique how attractive he considered the girl's body to be. Jian Ghomeshi. Jian Ghomeshi was a popular Canadian musician and radio host, with a long, successful career that began in the early 90s. This career ended in 2014 after Ghomeshi was accused of rape by an ex-girlfriend. This triggered a flood of accusations from 15 other women of non-consensual sexual encounters, linked to his BDSM fetish. Ghomeshi was acquitted in 2016, after the judge dismissed the charges due to a lack of credibility among the accusers. After the not guilty verdict was announced, feminist protesters outside the court chanted, "We believe survivors," and "Stop rape now." Hart Noacker. In January 2015, 10 people, 9 women and a trans individual, accused feminist blogger Hart Noacker of being a manipulator, abuser and rapist. Noacker was a prominent intersectional feminist, socialist and vegan activist. Noacker's accusers claimed he had groomed them, then become controlling, deliberately crossing boundaries and forcing himself on them. Noacker's accusers believed that he had used feminist activism as a way to get women to sleep with him. Unnamed male feminist YouTuber. On the 29th of May 2015, feminist YouTuber JJ Talks released a now-deleted video alleging that a male member of the YouTube social justice community had been sexually harassing her through private messages. The following day, Steve Shives released a video condemning the unnamed YouTuber's behaviour. Shives commented that women in his community were, quote, sadly likely to have had the same experience online, especially in what are supposed to be safe areas. Sarah Nyberg. Nicholas Nyberg, known as Sarah after transitioning, owned and operated a website called Final Fantasy Shrine Forums, and has contributed articles to several progressive news outlets. In September 2015, chat logs from the website were leaked, dated to 2005 and confirmed to be true by Nyberg. In these logs, Nyberg claims to be a paedophile after having embraced her, quote, child lover's soul long ago, and repeatedly fantasized about her 8-year-old cousin. Nyberg also informs us that she had been subject to investigation, as her computer had an encrypted drive with non-nude pictures that had been seized by the authorities. After this became public, Nyberg wrote a piece asserting that the chat logs had been a form of performance art, and that she did not mean any of it. Her aunt and uncle confirmed that Nyberg had never been allowed unsupervised contact with her cousin. Promise Delon Redmond. Redmond operated under the pseudonym Valis77 online, and describes himself as a proud brony and furry. He is featured as the moderator on the Twitch streaming channel of Feminist Frequency, a non-profit organisation dedicated to feminist advocacy. As a moderator, he was particularly active in removing undesirables, often saying, "They have no power here." In October 2015, it was discovered that Redmond is a registered child sex offender in the US state of Kansas. An investigation of his social media accounts contained questionable content. Jared Davis. Jared Davis was an outspoken feminist who ran a YouTube channel called Hannibal the Victor 13. He operated in the YouTube atheist community, promoting social justice until shutting down his channel in 2015 after it was revealed that Davis had a prior conviction as a sex offender for corruption of a minor. James Dean. James Dean was an adult film star who had a sizable following of feminist women due to his progressive values, with feminist media activists writing think piece on how they want their daughters to masturbate to him. Dean was seen as a wholesome boy next door and stated in a 2015 interview with Elle magazine that maybe he was a feminist. Later that year, Dean was accused of rape on Twitter by fellow adult performer and ex-girlfriend Stoya. This cost Dean his career, despite his denial of the charge. Richard Carrier. Dr. Richard Carrier is a historian, author, and prominent activist for atheism and feminism. Carrier has a distinguished academic career and a career as a public speaker. In 2015, Carrier separated from his wife after multiple counts of infidelity on his part due to his polyamory. In June 2016, Carrier was accused of sexual harassment at a house party after a speaking engagement, with another 2 subsequent accusations levelled in the weeks following the first. Carrier denied the legitimacy of the accusations, which he described as defamation. Robert Marmolejo. YouTuber Robert Marmolejo, otherwise known online as Unseen Perfidy, was a member of anti-harassment organisation Crash Override Network. Con is partnered with Twitter and funded by Feminist Frequency. In August 2016, he was accused of harassing, stalking and abusing around 20 women online after the chat logs for the Crash Override Network website were released. Izzy Galvez, a feminist activist and former member of the chat group, confirmed the logs were genuine. He commented that he was speechless and to please believe women and support Marmolejo's victims, and claimed that Marmolejo had admitted to the abuse before deactivating his social media accounts. Sarah Nyberg was also a member of the chat group. Devin Faraci. Devin Faraci was the editor-in-chief of influential blog Birth Movies Death until accused of sexual assault. During the 2016 presidential election, upon the leak of Donald Trump's "grab 'em by the pussy" tape, Faraci had pontificated on Twitter about how terrified he was of the Republican nominee. In response to Faraci's condemnation of the tape, a user called @SpaceCrone accused Faraci of doing the same to her and telling others to smell his fingers. Several other accusations followed, and Faraci apologized for each one. Faraci stepped down as the editor of the blog afterwards. Sunlil Patel. Sunlil Patel was a popular science fiction author and staunch critic of the Gamergate movement. In October 2016, Patel was accused of manipulating, gaslighting and objectification by several women, a charge Patel accepted in an apology statement in which he said he believes he caused women emotional harm and is deeply sorry for his toxic behaviour. Shortly after the allegations were made, Patel was dropped by his publishers. Mo Fathelbab. Mo Fathelbab ran the Experimental Comedy Gallery, a progressive comedy club, before it was shut down due to violations of New York City fire codes. Fathelbab blamed a sustained campaign by anonymous website 4chan and tied it to a fellow comedian and political rival Louis B., with whom he had recently disagreed. This escalated into a personal conflict between the two that included Fathelbab posting long accusatory rants via social media to Louis B., venomously threatening to end his career as a comic. This was ended when Fathelbab received an apparently unrelated allegation of rape from a female comic. Fathelbab subsequently closed or protected his social media accounts. Matt Hickey. Matt Hickey was a progressive video game blogger who gained a level of notoriety for his opposition to Gamergate, and once quipping, "Gamergate is a bunch of woman-hating future rapists." In October 2016, Hickey was jailed on 3 counts of rape. At the end of December 2017, the Washington State Attorney General's office filed a consumer protection lawsuit against Hickey, charging him with running a fraudulent adult talent agency, including the casting couch, for nearly a decade. Assistant Attorney General Andrea Algaret described it as a sophisticated scam. Jamie Kilstein. Jamie Kilstein is an outspoken feminist entertainer and host of the popular progressive podcast Citizen Radio, with co-host Alison Kilkenny. In February 2017, Kilkenny announced via Facebook that Citizen Radio was a safe space and that Jamie Kilstein had departed from the podcast due to multiple allegations from women that Kilstein had been manipulative, emotionally abusive and predatory. Kilkenny asked him to leave, and Don Giovanni Records, his record label, cut ties with him. Alexander Kolpakov. Alexander Kolpakov is better known online as Russian Deadpool, and was a host on the small feminist YouTube channel The Skeptic Feminist, along with 2 female co-hosts. Kolpakov stands accused of the murder of Henna Annabel, one of his co-hosts, by shooting her to death while under the influence of drugs. By the beginning of June 2017, Kolpakov had been charged with first-degree murder and is currently awaiting trial. Randy Stair, a transgender man to woman, left behind a trove of videos from her YouTube channel explaining why she had committed her Pennsylvania shooting rampage on the 8th of June 2017 that left 4 people dead, including Stair. In these videos, Stair explains how her life was a living hell due to the internal conflict generated from a deep-seated hatred of men and masculinity, combined with being born male, in addition to a hatred of non-white people. Christopher John Goldberg. Chris Goldberg, known by the handle Amirox online, was a former moderator at popular progressive video game forum NeoGAF and outspoken critic of the Gamergate movement. In June 2017, Goldberg was arrested and charged for possession of 53 images of child pornography on his mobile phone, with additional videos and images on his computer. Goldberg claimed he used these images to entertain issues he needed to suppress. Nick Robinson. Nick Robinson was a video producer for influential progressive video game blog Polygon. Robinson was accused via Twitter of inappropriate behaviour, such as requesting nudes from women and private messaging a woman asking for oral sex. Robinson was then fired by Polygon's parent company Vox Media, and apologised for his behaviour in a statement released on Twitter, in which he admitted that his position of minor power had gone to his head. Stuart Campbell. Stuart Campbell was a progressive video games journalist who criticised the Gamergate movement, and many prominent feminist activists in the game industry. He called Gamergate supporters nutters, and criticised several progressive activists and media outlets for being mad fundamentalists, and giving feminism a bad name by promoting the most radical forms of it. In August 2017, Campbell was arrested by police on charges of suspicion of harassment and malicious communications by a woman who claimed she was the victim of a 2-year campaign of online abuse by Campbell. Dan Broadbent. Dan Broadbent was the host of progressive podcast The Science Enthusiast. In September 2017, Broadbent was accused by several women of being a rapist sexual predator dumpster fuck because he sent them unsolicited nude pictures. Science activist Penny Lane, otherwise known as Science Pony, clarified the accusations on Facebook by pointing out that he wasn't being called a rapist, but instead a dick who preys upon rape victims. Andy Signor. Andy Signor is the creator of honest trailers for the popular YouTube channel Screen Junkies. Signor had described the show as having a feminist agenda on Twitter. In October 2017, Signor was accused by over 20 women of being a sexual predator and abuser who had, quote, used his position to prey on women. Following the allegations, Signor was fired from Screen Junkies due to his egregious and intolerable behaviour. Michael Hafford. Michael Hafford is a male feminist activist and freelance journalist who contributed regularly to left-wing publications such as Vice and Rolling Stone. He also ran a Male Feminist Here column at Broadly. In October 2017, Hafford was accused by multiple women of violent and sexual abuse, including rape, punching a woman in the face and leaving another covered in black bruises on her chin and chest. In response to these allegations, Hafford set his social media accounts to private. Sam Criss. Sam Criss is a feminist and socialist activist and freelance journalist. He was a regular contributor to many progressive media outlets, such as Vice magazine. In October 2017, Criss was accused of sexual abuse by a woman, by groping her, forcing her to drink alcohol against her will, and insisting they return to his wealthy parents' mansion, and refusing to acknowledge her resistance to his sexual advances. Criss accepted these allegations and issued an apology in which he claimed the behaviour was part of an existing sexual relationship in which the pair were engaged. This apology was widely rejected by the feminist community surrounding Criss, with many stating he did not believe he had actually done anything wrong. Following the allegations, Criss was dropped as a contributor by Vice. Shane Vader. Shane Vader is an intersectional feminist editor and cinematographer. In October 2017, Vader posted a series of tweets in which he admitted he had a dark secret that he'd been doing really good with in the past few years. A Twitter user called Roxy Lang claimed that she lived with Vader from July 2013 to April 2014, in which time their home was raided and searched by the police and Child Protective Services for child pornography. The authorities seized all the laptops contained within the apartment. Vader left the state and returned to live with his parents. Ed Eames. Ed Eames was a well-known figure in the UK punk and metal scene, where they have a reputation for being a DIY punk feminist. Eames is referred to as they because they are genderqueer. Eames has performed countless shows with various bands while being an outspoken activist for feminism, veganism, LGBT rights, and animal rights. In October 2017, Jamela Azuz, the feminist singer of metal band Ithaca, posted a Facebook status that alleged that she was personally sexually harassed over a prolonged period of time by Eames, in addition to other accounts from other women in which they accuse Eames of sexual assault, emotional abuse, physical abuse, and rape. Rupert Myers. Rupert Myers was a male feminist writer for GQ magazine. Myers was publicly opposed to men's rights activism. He was fired in October 2017 after he was accused on Twitter of sexually assaulting a woman outside a bar. Myers apologised to the woman in a private message and was subsequently fired from his position at GQ. He has since deactivated his Twitter account. Lockhart Steele. Lockhart Steele was the editorial director for Vox Media and the former CEO and founder of Curbed Network. In October 2017, Steele was accused of sexual harassment by a former employee. It was revealed that there had been previous investigations into Steele's egregious behaviour that had found multiple victims within the company. Due to Steele's position at Vox, he was forbidden to drink at corporate events in the future, and the investigation was not publicised. Vox CEO Jim Bankoff informed Vox staff that Steele had admitted to the allegations and had been fired. Matt Myers. Matt Myers is a web developer and outspoken intersectional social justice advocate. He was an implacable opponent of the Gamergate movement due to it not being, quote, progressive enough. In October 2017, Myers was accused of sexual harassment by a fellow feminist activist. Myers denied the accusation on the basis that he was secretly a homosexual furry and therefore could not have harassed a woman because he is only attracted sexually to male furries. Sam Biddle. Sam Biddle was a controversial blogger who worked for the now-defunct progressive media outlet Gawker. During his time at Gawker, he opposed the Gamergate movement and stated on Twitter that he was in favour of bullying. After the demise of Gawker, Biddle was hired by The Intercept. In October 2017, he was accused of sexual harassment and sexual assault by a co-worker. Biddle had allegedly entered the bathroom to masturbate in front of his victim. Fredrik Virtanen. Fredrik Virtanen was a journalist with Swedish newspaper Aftonbladet. Virtanen was a vocal opponent of Julian Assange, having called him a criminal. In October 2017, Virtanen was accused of rape by a feminist activist who claimed that she had been raped by Virtanen in 2006. After this allegation, 2 more women came forward to allege that Virtanen had attempted to rape them too, one of which was only 14 at the time. Tyler Malka. Tyler Malka, known online as Evilor, was the owner of progressive video game forum NeoGAF. Malka had previously been accused of sexual misconduct and in October 2017 was accused by a NeoGAF user of sexual assault. All posts on this subject were banned from NeoGAF by Malka himself, and the site went into lockdown. The moderators of NeoGAF abandoned the website, and the site was temporarily taken offline due to the scandal. Progressive video game blogs such as Kotaku and Polygon were accused of turning a blind eye to Malka's previous admissions of assault. When NeoGAF finally came back online, it was in a reduced state, described by progressive blog Mashable as, quote, an undead Nazi version of its former self. Kotaku published an article describing how NeoGAF's remaining users were in revolt, with users posting threads with titles ostensibly related to video games, but containing personal attacks against Malka. Malka has denied the accusations of sexual assault and claimed his accuser is not credible. Morgan Marquis Bois. Morgan Marquis Bois was a computer security researcher and far-left activist from New Zealand who had been widely profiled and quoted on far-left media outlets such as Wired and CNN, and had previously been a contributor for The Intercept. He also served on the technical advisory board of the Freedom of the Press Foundation. In November 2017, Bois was accused of being a serial rapist, with multiple accusations of anal rape levelled at him. The Verge comments that this is in contrast with his public persona, in which he would regularly give public talks about the problem of violence against women. Jordan Chariton. Jordan Chariton was an investigative reporter who was fired from the popular progressive news channel The Young Turks. Chariton was accused of misusing TYT funds for his own side project, Truth Against the Machine. In this capacity, he had had an affair with a female subordinate, who accused him of sexual assault. Chariton was fired 2 days after the allegations from his position on the Young Turks, despite claiming his innocence and refusing to take a severance package. He has vowed to sue. Justin George's Stephen Column. In 2015, far-left website Salon.com published a series of articles by Todd Nickerson, who popularized the term virtuous paedophile. This term was picked up by left-wing Twitter activists, before Salon altered their editorial policy in January 2017 and removed the articles. Justin George's Stephen Column, known on Twitter as Endophile, and a self-described virtuous paedophile, was arrested in December 2017 on charges of sexual assault and possessing child pornography. Max Landis. In December 2017, Hollywood screenwriter Max Landis was accused of being a, quote, psychopath who sexually abuses and assaults women by comedian Anna Kana, and this was followed up by feminist game developer Zoe Quinn, who accused Landis on Twitter of rape and sexual assault because of rumours that she had heard, calling it an open secret. TJ Miller. In December 2017, TJ Miller, a comedian and public feminist advocate, was accused of committing multiple counts of brutal sexual assault and rape of a woman he was dating in 2001 while attending George Washington University. It was alleged by a woman who wished to remain anonymous that Miller had subjected her to several violent ordeals, such as forcefully penetrating her with a beer bottle or punching her in the face during sex. Miller denies the accusations. This is not an exhaustive list, but I think if there is one thing that we can take away from the numerous examples of male feminists promoting feminism in public while being sexual abusers, pedophiles and rapists in private, is that women should be careful around male feminists.